Welcome to Tales from Sector 9, your portal to immersive sci-fi audio stories. If you enjoy deep space action, rogue AI, and conspiracy theory, you're in the right place. Tap like and subscribe to keep the adventures coming. Drop a comment and tell us where in the galaxy you're listening from. Now, sit back, relax, and prepare for tonight's story, Warthogs of Time. The Texas sun beat down on Laughlin Air Force Base with a merciless intensity, turning the tarmac into a shimmering mirage. 4 figures stood apart from the graduating class of 2023, their faces upturned to watch a formation of T-38 Talons slice through the cloudless sky. "So that's it," said Lieutenant Connor Giles, his hazel eyes tracking the aircraft. "Tomorrow we scatter to the winds." His voice carried a natural authority that had made him the unofficial leader of their tight-knit group. Lieutenant Aria Monroe brushed a strand of dark hair from her face. "Hardly scattering. We all put in for the same assignments." Her analytical mind had gotten them through the most challenging coursework, but it was her emotional stability that had anchored them through the turbulence of training. "And pulled it off," added Lieutenant Diego Rivas, grinning broadly. He spun his graduation cap on one finger. "The impossible quartet stays together." His irreverence had been their salvation during the darkest moments of undergraduate pilot training. Lieutenant Josh Griffin, Griff to everyone who knew him, nodded silently. He rarely wasted words, but when he spoke, everyone listened. "Moody attends, all 4 of us." His strategic mind had mapped their pathway through the Air Force bureaucracy to keep them together. They had met on their first day at Laughlin, 4 distinct personalities thrown together by the randomness of military assignments. What began as mutual assistance to survive the rigors of pilot training had transformed into something deeper, a bond forged in shared suffering, celebration, and unwavering support. Connor extended his hand, palm down. "I propose a pact." The others placed their hands atop his without hesitation. "Wherever we go together," Connor said, his voice solemn. "No one gets left behind. Not in training, not in combat, not in life. Not in death," added Aria quietly. "Through fire and sky," Diego continued. "Until the last flight," Griff completed. None of them could have known how prophetic those words would become, or how they would be tested across the boundaries of time itself. January 12th, 2025, Moody Air Force Base, Georgia. "Warthog lead to control. We are wheels up and heading southeast. Weather looks clear. Mission proceeding as planned." Lieutenant Connor Giles adjusted his helmet as his A-10C Thunderbolt II, affectionately known as the Warthog, lifted from the runway. Behind him, 3 identical aircraft rose in perfect formation, their distinctive silhouettes unmistakable against the morning sky. "Copy that, Warthog lead. Maintain heading 170. Wind conditions optimal. You are cleared for training exercise Alpha Tango 3. Connor glanced at his formation. To his right, Aria's aircraft maintained rock-steady position. Behind them, Diego and Griff followed with textbook precision. 2 years at Moody had honed their skills to a razor's edge. They were no longer novices, but seasoned pilots who could make the notoriously challenging A-10 sing. "Warthog 2, systems nominal." Aria's voice came through his headset, measured and calm. "Warthog 3, ready to party," Diego chimed in. "Warthog 4, aligned and tracking," Griff concluded. The mission was straightforward. a mock combat run over the Atlantic, practicing maritime support operations. They would rendezvous with a naval destroyer 100 miles offshore, simulate close air support, then return to base. A standard Tuesday for the 23rd Fighter Group. 40 minutes into the flight, Connor noticed the first anomaly. His navigation system flickered, coordinates jumping erratically before stabilizing. Warthog lead to flight. I'm showing some nav inconsistencies. Anyone else? Affirmative, Arya responded immediately. Compass heading just shifted 15 degrees without aircraft movement. Same here, Diego added, and my comms are getting static. Control, this is Warthog lead. We're experiencing instrument irregularities. Request weather update for our sector. The radio crackled with interference. Control's response fragmented and unintelligible. Control, please repeat. You're breaking up. Nothing but static answered him. Electronic warfare exercise? Griff suggested, his voice unchanged despite the situation. Unscheduled, Connor replied. And not in this... His words died as he looked ahead. Where clear sky had stretched to the horizon moments before, a disturbance now formed. It began as a pinprick of unusual light, a strange mingling of electric blue and sulphurous yellow, expanding outward in concentric rings. Are you seeing this? Diego's voice had lost its characteristic levity. Affirmative, Arya responded. Some kind of atmospheric phenomenon. Looks like... I don't know what it looks like. St. Elmo's fire, offered Griff. Not unless St. Elmo's been messing with new recipes, Diego muttered. The disturbance grew rapidly, from the size of a dinner plate to a house to a football field in seconds. Swirling energy formed a perfect vortex, its center a void that seemed to bend the very light around it. Warthog flight. Execute immediate 180. New heading 350, Connor ordered, banking his aircraft sharply. The A-10s responded sluggishly, as if swimming through molasses. Connor's control stick felt abnormally heavy, the aircraft reluctant to change course. I've lost control authority, Arya reported, her voice tight but controlled. Stick is unresponsive. Same here, called Diego. It's like something's pulling us in. Connor watched his airspeed indicator rise despite throttling back. The vortex exerted its own force, drawing them inexorably forward. Ejection is not recommended, Griff stated flatly. Wind shear would be fatal. Connor made a split-second decision. Maintain formation. Power through on my mark. If we can't avoid it, we go through it together. Copy, came three voices in unison. 3, 2, 1. Mark. 4 warthogs accelerated into the heart of the anomaly, their titanium frames vibrating as reality itself seemed to bend around them. The vortex swallowed them whole. Connor's world dissolved into chaos. His vision warped and stretched, colors bleeding into one another like wet paint. A deep vibration shuddered through his aircraft, rattling his teeth and bones. Warnings blared across his instrument panel before suddenly falling silent. For what felt like an eternity, he floated in a sensory void. No sight, no sound, only the pressure of G-forces and his own thundering heartbeat. Then, with a jolt that slammed him against his harness, reality snapped back. Blue sky, fluffy clouds, the drone of his engines, now running smoothly. Sound off, Connor barked into his radio, scanning desperately for his squadron. Warthog 2, still here, Arya responded immediately. That was... I don't have words. Warthog 3, present and confused as hell, Diego added. Warthog 4, operational, Griff concluded. But something's wrong. Connor felt it too. The air itself seemed different. Clearer somehow, with none of the industrial haze that typically hung over the eastern seaboard. His navigation system had rebooted, but displayed impossible coordinates. His radio picked up nothing but scattered fragments of transmission, none using modern military protocols. Check your GPS, he instructed. No signal, Arya reported. Same, Diego confirmed. Communication satellites are not responding, Griff added. Neither are navigation constellations. A chill ran down Connor's spine. Maintain visual formation. We head to Moody. Basic navigation. Old school. They turned westward, following the coastline. Fuel gauges showed adequate reserves, but Connor kept one eye on them as they flew. Without navigation aids, they relied on visual landmarks to guide them home. Something was deeply, fundamentally wrong. The landscape below appeared both familiar and altered. Coastal developments that should have been visible were simply absent. Stretches of forest extended where Connor knew highways should cut through. When they passed over what should have been Jacksonville, the city's skyline was unrecognizable, smaller, more compact, lacking its modern architectural signatures. This can't be right, Diego muttered. It's like we're in the wrong place. Or the wrong time, Arya said quietly. No one responded to that disturbing suggestion. They followed the coastline until they recognized the distinctive geography around Valdosta, Georgia. From there, they traced their way to where Moody Air Force Base should be. It was there, but not as they knew it. What the hell? Diego's voice cracked as they circled at 5,000 feet. Below them stood a military airfield, but one from another era. Instead of modern facilities, they saw wooden buildings with tin roofs. The runways were shorter, narrower, and on those runways sat aircraft that belonged in museums. P-51 Mustangs, B-24 Liberators, and various support vehicles that hadn't been in service for 80 years. I'm seeing World War II-era aircraft, Arya stated, her voice clinically detached as she processed the impossible. P-51Ds, specifically. 3 squadrons by the arrangement. Fuel status? Connor asked, forcing himself to focus on immediate concerns. 30 minutes, Max, Griff reported. Options? Limited, Griff replied. We land or we crash. We land, Connor decided. Together. They might shoot us down, Diego pointed out. If they have anything that can catch us, Arya countered. Those P-51s are the fastest things they've got, and we can outrun them. We're not running, Connor stated firmly. We're landing, and we're sticking together. He switched to general emergency frequency. This is United States Air Force flight of 4 A-10C aircraft requesting emergency landing clearance. We are low on fuel and require immediate assistance. The radio crackled, then a confused voice responded. Unidentified aircraft, you are entering restricted military airspace. Identify yourself using proper Army Air Force protocols. Army Air Force, not Air Force. Connor's stomach tightened. This is Lieutenant Connor Giles, United States Air Force. We are declaring an emergency and require immediate landing clearance. There was a long pause before the controller responded. Unidentified aircraft, you are cleared to land runway 3. Be advised, you will be met by security forces. Copy that, Connor replied. Warthog flight, we go in, we land, we stick together. No matter what happens next. No matter what, the others echoed. 4 A-10 Warthogs, representatives of the most fearsome close air support capability of the early 21st century, descended toward a World War II airfield. As they approached, Connor could see figures running across the tarmac, pointing upward in evident shock and confusion. Several trucks with mounted weapons raced to positions along the runway. Easy approach, standard interval, Connor instructed. I'll go first. His Warthog touched down smoothly, the advanced aircraft rolling to a stop with a precision that would have been impossible for the planes of this era. One by one, the others landed behind him, taxiing into formation on the apron. They were surrounded almost immediately. Jeeps and trucks encircled them, disgorging soldiers who took cover behind vehicles, weapons trained on the strange aircraft. Their uniforms, their weapons, even their vehicles, all from another time. Power down, Connor ordered. We exit together. 4 canopies opened in unison. 4 pilots removed their helmets and raised their hands, standing in their cockpits. United States Air Force, Connor called out. We come in peace. A senior officer approached cautiously, his .45 sidearm drawn. His insignia marked him as a colonel, though the style was subtly different from what they were accustomed to. Step down slowly, the colonel ordered. Keep your hands where I can see them. As they complied, climbing down from their aircraft, the stunned expressions of the surrounding personnel told them everything. These men had never seen anything like the A-10s before. The massive 30mm GAU-8A Avenger rotary cannon protruding from the nose of each aircraft drew particular attention, its size making the weapons of this era look like toys. The 4 pilots stood together on the tarmac, hands raised, surrounded by the past. I am Colonel James Whitmore, commanding officer of Moody Field, the officer announced, and you have exactly 30 seconds to explain what in God's name you are and where you came from before I have you shot as spies. Connor Giles stepped forward, shoulders squared, and looked directly into the colonel's eyes. Sir, this is going to sound impossible, but we believe we've traveled through time. We're United States Air Force pilots from the year 2025. The room was Spartan. A metal table, 4 chairs, and a single hanging light that cast harsh shadows across the faces of the 4 pilots. Armed guards stood at the door, rifles at the ready. Outside, they could hear the continuous activity of a military base at war. Colonel Whitmore paced the length of the small room, occasionally stopping to study one of the pilots, as if their faces might reveal the truth of their incredible story. Behind him stood a severe-looking man in a civilian suit who had introduced himself only as Mr. Johnson, War Department. Let's go through this again, Whitmore said, his voice strained with frustration and disbelief. You claim to be from the year 2025. Yes, sir, Connor replied. In your timeline, you are officers in the United States Air Force. Correct, sir. Flying advanced attack aircraft called Warthogs. A-10C Thunderbolt IIs, sir. Warthog is the nickname. Whitmore slammed his palm on the table. Do you have any idea how preposterous this sounds? Yes, sir, we do, Arya interjected calmly. But our aircraft are demonstrably beyond current technology. The materials alone, which could be experimental German designs, Johnson interrupted, speaking for the first time. His voice was cold, calculating, Or perhaps Japanese. Technology disguised to infiltrate our bases. With American pilots? Diego challenged. Sir, run our fingerprints. Check our dental records. DNA testing. He stopped, remembering that DNA profiling wouldn't exist for decades. Our dog tags are standard issue United States Air Force, Griff pointed out. The manufacturing methods alone would be impossible to replicate with current technology. Johnson approached the table, leaning forward. If what you say is true, then you possess knowledge of the future, military outcomes, technological advancements, information that could alter the course of history. Which is precisely why we need to be careful, Connor replied. We're aware of the paradoxes involved. A knock at the door interrupted them. A young lieutenant entered, whispering something to Colonel Whitmore, whose expression shifted from skepticism to shock. Mr. Johnson, Whitmore said, intelligence has intercepted an encrypted Axis transmission. Our cryptographers are saying it's unlike anything they've seen. Arya straightened. I can help with that. Advanced encryption is part of our training. Johnson and Whitmore exchanged glances. If she can decode what our best cryptographers cannot, Johnson said slowly, it would lend credibility to their story. And if she's a spy, she'll reveal herself by knowing enemy codes, Whitmore added. They led Arya to the communications center, the others following under guard. The room buzzed with activity, men and women in uniform hunched over equipment, transcribing intercepted messages, analyzing patterns. The chief cryptographer, a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses, handed Arya a sheet of paper covered in seemingly random characters. Intercepted 4 hours ago, he explained. Origin appears to be a German U-boat operating off the Carolina coast. We've tried standard Enigma variations, but... This isn't standard Enigma, Arya interrupted, studying the pattern. They've modified it. Give me 30 minutes. She worked methodically, applying decryption techniques that wouldn't be developed for decades. The room fell silent as she worked, all eyes on the woman from the future. 23 minutes later, she handed a decoded message to Colonel Whitmore. U-boat pack coordinates, she explained. 7 vessels converging to intercept a convoy departing Norfolk tomorrow morning. They're planning to strike at dawn, approximately 50 miles offshore. The chief cryptographer verified her work, his face pale. She's right. This is incredible. Whitmore's demeanor changed subtly. Mr. Johnson, I believe we need to reconsider our approach to these visitors. Johnson nodded slowly. I'll contact Washington immediately. They were moved from the interrogation room to more comfortable quarters, still under guard, but with beds, a small dining area, and windows overlooking the airfield where their warthogs sat, surrounded by technicians studying them with obvious fascination. They believe us, Diego said, watching the activity below. At least, they're starting to. They don't have a choice, Griff replied. The evidence is sitting on their runway. Connor paced the room. The question is, what happens now? We know enough history to be dangerous. And our aircraft. He trailed off, the implications hanging in the air. They could alter the course of the war, Arya finished for him. Dramatically. The door opened, admitting Colonel Whitmore and a distinguished older man in an army uniform adorned with the stars of a 4-star general. Ladies and gentlemen, Whitmore said, General Matthew Caldwell, direct from Washington. They snapped to attention, military training overriding the surreal circumstances. At ease, Caldwell said, studying them with keen intelligence. I've spent the last 12 hours reviewing your aircraft, your equipment, and your personnel records. What little we've been able to verify. I've also seen the results of Lieutenant Monroe's cryptography work, which saved a convoy carrying 5,000 troops and critical war materials. He sat at the small table, gesturing for them to join him. I'm here to make you an offer, he continued. Or perhaps it's better described as a pact. What kind of pact, sir? Connor asked. One that will employ your unique capabilities while preserving the timeline as much as possible. Caldwell leaned forward. We are at war, fighting for the very survival of democracy and freedom. Your presence here, your aircraft, your knowledge, could save countless lives and potentially shorten the conflict. With respect, sir, Arya interjected. Altering history could have unpredictable consequences. Which is why what I'm proposing must remain absolutely confidential, Caldwell replied. Your existence will be known only to a handful of individuals at the highest levels. Your aircraft will be publicly attributed to experimental technology. Your actions will be carefully managed to assist the war effort without fundamentally altering its course. And after the war? Griff asked. Caldwell's expression softened slightly. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it, Lieutenant. But I give you my word that your service will be honored, even if the world can never know the full truth. The four pilots exchanged glances, a silent communication born of their years together. What exactly would you have us do, sir? Connor asked. Your aircraft are attack platforms, correct? Designed for close air support and anti-armor operations? Yes, sir. The A-10 is specifically designed to destroy tanks and provide infantry support. Then that's what you'll do, Caldwell stated. Under my direct command, deployed to theaters where your capabilities can be most effective without dramatically altering the strategic overview of the conflict. He stood, moving to the window. Your aircraft have already been moved to a secure facility for analysis. We need to understand what they need to remain operational. Fuel, ammunition, maintenance. That's going to be a challenge, sir, Diego pointed out. A-10s run on JP-8 jet fuel, not aviation gasoline, and the GAU-8 cannon fires 30mm depleted uranium rounds. Then we'll have to engineer solutions, Caldwell replied. And you're going to help us. As the general outlined his plan, the four pilots realized they were being drafted into a secret war within a war. Future weapons wielded carefully in the past, their true nature concealed from history itself. The facility was buried deep in the Appalachian Mountains, a sprawling complex carved into the living rock. Inside, their four Warthogs sat under bright lights, panels removed, systems exposed for study. Teams of engineers crawled over them like ants, measuring, documenting, occasionally arguing over some incomprehensible, to them, component. It feels wrong, Diego muttered, watching a technician carefully extracting the flight computer from his aircraft. Like they're dissecting them. They're trying to understand them, Arya corrected. And we need them to, if we're ever going to fly again. They had been at the facility for 3 weeks, working alongside the brightest minds of 1942 to solve seemingly insurmountable technological challenges, chief among them, fuel and ammunition. Dr. Eleanor Reeves, a brilliant chemist who had abandoned a promising academic career to join the war effort, had been tasked with the fuel problem. She led Arya through her laboratory, where samples of a 10 fuel underwent analysis. Your JP-8 is fascinating, Reeves said, examining a chromatography result. The molecular structure is similar to our kerosene, but with specific additives for high-performance turbines. She tapped a complex formula on her blackboard. I believe we can synthesize a reasonable approximation using modified petroleum distillation techniques. Will it work in the engines? Arya asked. Not as efficiently as your fuel, but yes, I believe so. We've already begun small-scale production. Across the facility, Connor worked with Colonel James McNamara, Army Air Force Ordnance Specialist, on the ammunition problem. We can match the dimensions, McNamara explained, showing Connor a prototype 30mm shell. But the depleted uranium penetrator is beyond our capabilities. Tungsten would be an alternative, Connor suggested. Less effective, but still powerful against armor. Tungsten we can do, McNamara agreed, but production will be limited. How many rounds does each of your cannons carry? 1,171 rounds at full capacity. McNamara whistled. That's a lot of tungsten, but we'll make it work. Meanwhile, Diego and Griff worked with the maintenance teams, teaching them the basics of Attend systems and developing simplified maintenance protocols that could be executed with 1940s tools. The hydraulics are the easy part, Diego explained to a group of mechanics. It's the electronics that'll give you headaches. We need to preserve the current components for as long as possible. And when they fail, asked a gray-haired master sergeant. Then we get creative, Griff replied, or we ground the aircraft. At night, the four gathered in their shared quarters to assess progress. They're adaptable, Connor observed, more than I expected. They have to be, Arya replied. They're fighting a world war with limited resources and constant pressure. Adaptation is survival. Dr. Reeves thinks they'll have enough fuel for operational testing within 2 weeks, Diego reported. Ammunition will take longer. And crews? Connor asked. We've selected 16 mechanics, Griff answered. Quick learners, detail-oriented. They're being trained on basic maintenance protocols. Connor nodded, processing the information. So we'll be operational soon. Then what? None of them had an answer. They were building the means to insert 21st century warfare into history, but the consequences remained as unknowable as the vortex that had brought them there. The next morning, General Caldwell arrived with news. North Africa, he announced without preamble. Rommel's panzers are giving our boys hell. We need you operational in 30 days. The timeline was aggressive, but achievable. As they immersed themselves in the challenge, Connor found himself building unexpected bridges with the men and women of this era. Their dedication, their ingenuity, their unwavering commitment in the face of a global threat. It awoke something in him, a connection to the roots of the service he had joined. These were his predecessors, the foundation upon which his own military experience had been built. Working alongside them, teaching them, learning from them, it transformed what had begun as a bizarre accident into something that felt increasingly like purpose. One evening, as Connor helped Colonel Whitmore understand the principles of the A-10's titanium bathtub armor, the older man paused reflectively. You know, Lieutenant, in all my years of service, I never imagined I'd be learning combat tactics from my grandchildren's generation. Does it bother you, sir? Connor asked. Taking direction from someone so much younger? Whitmore chuckled. Age is just a number, son. Wisdom comes from experience, not years. And you four have experiences none of us can imagine. He sobered. But I do wonder, what kind of world did we build that still needs weapons like yours? Connor chose his words carefully. A world worth protecting, sir. Different challenges, same principles. Whitmore nodded, seemingly satisfied. Then we didn't fail entirely, did we? No, sir, Connor replied with conviction. You laid the foundation for everything we believe in. The North African sun was merciless, baking the desert hardpan to temperatures that shimmered in waves of heat. 4 A-10 Warthogs sat on a hastily constructed runway, their engines idling with a distinctive whine that drew curious stares from nearby P-40 Warhawk pilots. In the makeshift briefing tent, Connor traced the mission route on a paper map, while General Caldwell and the local command staff listened intently. Rommel's 15th Panzer Division is moving to outflank Allied positions here, Connor explained, indicating a valley 20 miles from their position. Intelligence puts their strength at approximately 80 tanks with mechanized infantry support. Conventional air support would be limited, a British liaison officer added. The terrain offers too much cover, and their anti-aircraft capabilities are substantial. That's why we're going in low and fast, Connor continued. The A-10 is designed to survive in high-threat environments. We'll approach from the east, using this ridge for cover, then pop up for our attack runs. General Caldwell addressed the local commander. Colonel Harris, your men need to be ready to exploit the opening these aircraft will create. Once the German armor is neutralized, push forward immediately. Harris nodded, though his expression betrayed lingering skepticism. He had been briefed on the special nature of the Warthog squadron, but like most who encountered them for the first time, he struggled to accept their capabilities until he saw them in action. 1 hour to wheels up, Connor concluded. Any questions? Just one, Harris replied. What do we call you? Every squadron has a name. The 4 pilots exchanged glances. They hadn't considered this aspect of their integration. Given the secrecy of our mission, Arya suggested, perhaps something suitably mythical. Dragonflight, Diego offered, because these babies breathe fire. Caldwell nodded approvingly. Dragonflight it is. 53 minutes later, 4 A-10s thundered down the makeshift runway, lifting into the clear desert sky. They carried a minimal weapons load, the 30mm cannon with tungsten rounds and 4 500-pound bombs. Fuel constraints limited their loiter time to 40 minutes over the target area. Dragon lead to flight. Combat spread. Follow me, Connor directed as they approached the ridge that would conceal their final approach. They flew at 300 feet, the Warthog's camouflage blending with the desert terrain. Modern stealth technology didn't exist in their aircraft, but the element of surprise would serve the same purpose for their first engagement. As they crested the ridge, the German column came into view. A long line of Panzer-WWIIs and supporting vehicles snaking through the valley below, unaware of the predators approaching from above. Weapons hot, Connor ordered. Dragon 2 and 3, take the lead elements. 4 and I will hit the rear to box them in. Copy that. 2 is hot. 3 is hot and hungry. 4, weapons free. The A-10s dropped like falcons, engines howling as they dived toward their targets. The distinctive sound of the GAU-8A cannon, an otherworldly brrrt that would become legendary in a different war decades later, echoed across the valley as Arya opened fire on the lead tanks. The effect was devastating. Tungsten rounds tore through German armor designed to withstand weapons of a different era. Tanks exploded in plumes of flame and smoke. Infantry scattered in panic, having never encountered an aircraft that could deliver such precise, overwhelming firepower. Diego followed seconds later, his cannon decimating the command vehicles in the center of the column. From the rear, Connor and Griff completed the encirclement, bombs falling with precision to block escape routes. In 7 minutes, 80% of the 15th Panzer Division's fighting capability had been neutralized. The surviving forces, disorganized and demoralized, fell back directly into the advancing Allied units that had mobilized at the sound of the attack. Dragon lead to base, primary targets neutralized, Connor reported. Enemy armor destroyed, survivors retreating eastward into Allied advance. The radio crackled with Colonel Harris's voice, no longer skeptical, but filled with awe. Base copies. My God, what did you people do out there? Our job, Colonel, Connor replied simply. Dragonflight returning to base. As they flew back, Arya broke the squadron's silence. We just changed history. We just saved lives, Griff countered. Both can be true, Diego added quietly. When they landed, word of their achievement had already spread throughout the base. Soldiers lined the runway, staring in disbelief as the strange aircraft taxied past. General Caldwell met them as they climbed from their cockpits, his expression a mix of relief and gravity. Preliminary reports indicate over 600 German casualties, 74 tanks destroyed, with minimal collateral damage, he informed them. Colonel Harris's forces have advanced 12 miles against negligible resistance. Connor removed his helmet, surveying the jubilant faces surrounding them. And our cover story? Experimental aircraft, highly classified, Caldwell replied. The men have been instructed not to discuss what they've seen. He smiled grimly. Though they've already given you a nickname, the Dragon Angels. That night, as the 4 pilots sat alone under the desert stars, the reality of what they had done, what they had become, settled around them like a shroud. We're not just visitors anymore, Connor said softly. We're participants. Did we have a choice? Diego wondered. There's always a choice, Arya replied. We chose to save Allied lives today. At the cost of German ones, Griff pointed out. Men who, in our history, might have survived to go home, have children, create futures that now won't exist. They fell silent, contemplating the weight of altering time itself. The bonds that had united them at Laughlin now served as their anchor in a past that grew more real, more consequential with each passing day. Whatever happens, Connor said finally, we face it together. That hasn't changed. In the distance, celebrations continued as soldiers toasted the mysterious Dragon Angels and their impossible victory. None of them could know that history itself had been quietly, irrevocably altered. The English Channel churned beneath them, whitecaps visible in the pre-dawn darkness. 4 A-10 Warthogs, now weathered from 18 months of secret combat operations, flew in tight formation toward the coast of France. Their fuselages bore no markings. Their very existence remained classified at the highest levels. June 6, 1944. D-Day. Dragon lead to flight. Final weapons check, Connor ordered, his voice steady despite the historical weight of the moment. One by one, they confirmed their readiness. Their mission was precise. Neutralize the German artillery positions overlooking Omaha Beach before the naval bombardment began. It was a task impossible for conventional aircraft of the era, requiring low-altitude precision strikes against hardened targets in darkness. For the Warthog pilots, it was Tuesday. Approaching initial point, Griff reported from the lead position. He had planned this mission, calculating approach vectors that would minimize their exposure to anti-aircraft fire while maximizing surprise. 1 minute to target. "Remember, we hit hard and fast," Connor said. "Those bunkers need to be neutralized before the landing craft hit the beach." They had studied the historical accounts of Omaha Beach exhaustively. The devastating losses, the initial failures, the near disaster that was salvaged only through extraordinary courage and sacrifice. Their mission tonight might alter that narrative, save hundreds, perhaps thousands of lives. 30 seconds, Griff announced. Infrared active. The A-10s were equipped with limited night vision capabilities, technology from a war yet to be fought. Below, the dark coastline resolved into the deadly network of German defenses. Concrete bunkers housing 88mm guns capable of shredding landing craft. Mortars positioned to rain fire onto the beach. Machine gun nests covering every approach. Targets acquired, Griff confirmed. Dragon flight, weapons free. The 4 aircraft split apart, each targeting a specific section of the defensive line. Griff led the first attack, his cannon tearing into the eastern gun emplacements with surgical precision. The massive concrete structures, designed to withstand naval bombardment, offered little protection against weapons engineered to destroy modern tanks. Connor followed, focusing on the central command bunkers. The specialized tungsten rounds penetrated reinforced concrete as if it were cardboard, detonating ammunition stores inside. Secondary explosions blossomed along the coastline like deadly flowers. Diego swept in from the west, targeting the extensive minefield markers that would channel landing craft into killing zones. His bombs obliterated the German observation posts that would have coordinated the defensive fire. Aria took the most dangerous approach, skimming just above the water to strike the forward machine gun positions from behind. Her cannon fire walked methodically along the defensive line, silencing one deadly nest after another. In less than 4 minutes, they had systematically dismantled defenses that would have exacted a terrible toll on the first waves of Allied soldiers. "Dragon lead to flight. Egress vector 180, Connor ordered. Mission complete. As they turned south, the initial naval bombardment began. Salvos of fire directed at targets that, unknown to the gunners, had already been neutralized. Behind them, the largest amphibious invasion in history was about to commence on a battlefield that history would not recognize. Hours later, as reports filtered back to England, the impact of their mission became clear. Allied casualties on Omaha were significantly lower than projected. The advance inland proceeded more rapidly than planned. General Caldwell, monitoring from a command center in London, summoned them for a private briefing. "You've altered the course of the invasion," he informed them, spreading out a map covered with unit positions. Fifth Corps is 4 miles further inland than our most optimistic projections indicated they would be by this time. "Is that a problem, sir?" Connor asked. Caldwell sighed, the weight of responsibility evident in his features. "It's a deviation from established history, but one that saves Allied lives." He studied them thoughtfully. "You've become quite proficient at walking that line, haven't you?" None of them answered. Over the past 2 years, they had participated in dozens of carefully selected operations across multiple theaters, always in support of historical outcomes. never fundamentally altering the strategic direction of the war, but saving lives where possible. "What's our next assignment, sir?" Arya asked finally. "The Pacific," Caldwell replied. "Your particular capabilities are needed on Okinawa." The jungle seemed to breathe, exhaling waves of humid air that clung to skin and equipment alike. Mosquitoes swarmed around lighting fixtures in the crude briefing room, a repurposed native structure on a captured island that didn't appear on any civilian map. Marine Colonel Frank Matheson, weathered beyond his years, pointed to a topographical map spread across a makeshift table. "The Japanese have established a defensive line here, running the width of the island. Heavy artillery embedded in these caves, overlapping fields of fire covering every approach." Diego studied the terrain, mentally calculating attack vectors. Those ridgelines would normally conceal an approach, but they've probably pre-sighted their artillery on those corridors. "Exactly," Matheson confirmed. "We've lost 2 companies trying to penetrate their position. Conventional air support has been ineffective. The cave networks are too well protected." Connor glanced at his team. After 3 years of operations, they had developed an instinctive understanding of each mission's requirements. This calls for precision strikes on the cave entrances, followed immediately by your ground assault. "Can your aircraft operate in these weather conditions?" Matheson asked skeptically. "Ceilings under 500 feet with these monsoon patterns." The A-10 was designed for exactly this kind of environment, Arya assured him. Low visibility, difficult terrain, hardened targets. While Arya and Griff finalized the attack plan with Matheson, Connor pulled Diego aside. "You've been quiet," he observed. Diego shrugged, an uncharacteristic tension in his shoulders. "Just focused on the mission." 3 years, Connor said quietly. "We've been here 3 years. Diego's facade cracked slightly. "Yeah, 3 years of fighting in a war that ended 80 years ago. 3 years of being ghosts. Having second thoughts?" "Aren't you?" Diego challenged. "We've killed thousands of men, Con. Men who, in our timeline, might have surrendered, gone home, lived full lives." Connor had no answer. The moral calculus of their situation had grown more complex with each mission. They were saving Allied lives, yes, but at what cost to the timeline, to history itself? "We're together," he said finally. "That's what matters. We made a pact." Diego nodded, but his eyes remained troubled. The next morning, thick clouds hung low over the mountainous island as 4 A-10s took off from a hastily constructed airstrip. They flew in line-astern formation, threading their way through narrow valleys toward the Japanese defensive line. "Dragon lead to flight. We're 3 minutes from initial point," Connor reported. "Weather's deteriorating. Stay tight." "Dragon 3 copies," Diego responded. "I've got a better approach. That canyon to the northwest provides cover all the way to their flank." Connor checked his map. "That's not the planned route." "Trust me," Diego insisted. "I've been studying the topography. We can surprise them, hit them where they're not expecting an attack." After a moment's hesitation, Connor made a decision. "Dragon flight, follow 3. Diego, you've got point." Diego banked his Warthog toward the narrow canyon, descending to just 200 feet above the jungle canopy. The others followed, trusting his judgment. The canyon walls rose around them, providing perfect concealment as they approached the Japanese position. "Intel indicates a platoon-sized unit trapped on that ridge," Diego reported. gesturing toward a rocky outcropping visible through breaks in the clouds. They've been cut off for 3 days. This wasn't part of their mission brief, but Connor understood immediately. We hit the main defensive line, then swing back to provide close support for the trapped Marines. Affirmative, Diego confirmed. They emerged from the canyon directly behind the Japanese artillery positions. The surprise was total. Anti-aircraft guns were oriented toward the expected approach vector, leaving their rear vulnerable. Weapons hot, Connor ordered. Dragonflight, engage. The synchronized attack obliterated the defensive position in minutes. As Matheson's forces began their advance, Diego peeled away toward the stranded Marine unit. Dragon 3 to Sierra Actual, he called on the emergency frequency. American aircraft on approach to your position. Mark your location with colored smoke if available. A strained voice responded immediately. Sierra Actual copies. Popping yellow smoke now. We have wounded and are under heavy attack from the North Ridge. A plume of yellow smoke rose from the jungle. Simultaneously, Diego spotted Japanese forces moving toward the Marine position, at least a company strength, with heavy weapons. Dragon 3 engaging hostiles approaching from the north, Diego reported, diving toward the enemy formation. His cannon fire tore through the advancing Japanese troops, halting their attack instantly. Dragon Lead, Sierra Actual has wounded that need immediate evacuation, Diego called. They won't survive without medical attention. Connor made another snap decision. Aria, return to base and coordinate an emergency extraction. See if they can get landing craft to the nearest accessible shore point. Griff and I will maintain air superiority. Diego, stay with the Marines until they're secured. For the next 40 minutes, Diego orbited the Marine position, providing protective fire as the trapped unit made their way toward an extraction point where Navy landing craft could reach them. He used precision fire to create a safe corridor through enemy territory, allowing the Marines to evacuate their wounded comrades. As they landed, Colonel Matheson met them on the runway, his expression a mix of gratitude and confusion. That rescue wasn't part of your mission parameters. With respect, sir, Diego replied. Saving Marines is always part of our mission. Matheson studied him for a long moment, then nodded. The men you saved are calling it a miracle. Said a metal angel appeared out of nowhere, breathing fire on the enemy. Later, in their quarters, Connor found Diego sitting alone, staring at a faded photograph of their graduation from pilot training. Those Marines weren't mentioned in any historical account, Diego said without looking up. They were supposed to die on that ridge, forgotten. You don't know that, Connor countered. Don't I? Diego met his gaze. We've changed things, Con. Small things, maybe, but real things. People who lived instead of died. People who died instead of lived. Ripples spreading outward. Connor sat beside his friend. We made a choice when we first landed, to help where we could. And what if we're making everything worse? Diego asked softly. What if we return to 2025 and find a world destroyed because of something we changed? Or what if we find it better? Connor suggested. We can't know. We can only do what seems right in the moment. Diego fell silent, turning the photograph in his hands. After a long pause, he spoke again, his voice barely audible. I'm not sure I want to go back anymore. The admission hung between them, giving voice to thoughts each of them had harbored but never expressed. After 3 years in the past, their connection to 2025 had grown tenuous, abstract. This war, these people, This time, it had become their reality. "We stick together," Connor reminded him. "Whatever happens." "Whatever happens," Diego echoed, but his voice carried a new uncertainty. "The Japanese home islands are heavily fortified," General Douglas MacArthur explained, his commanding presence dominating the secure briefing room despite the presence of several four-star generals and admirals. "Our intelligence suggests they've concentrated over 2 million troops for the defense of the mainland, with civilian militia numbering several million more." He gestured to the large map of Japan spread across the central table. "Operation Downfall will be executed in 2 phases. Operation Olympic targeting Kyushu in November 1945, followed by Operation Coronet against the Kanto Plain near Tokyo in spring 1946. The assembled military leaders nodded grimly. The anticipated casualties were staggering, potentially millions of American soldiers and many times that number of Japanese military and civilians. At the back of the room, partially concealed in shadow, sat 4 officers whose uniforms bore no conventional unit insignia. After 4 years of secretive operations, Dragonflight had become a phantom presence in war planning, consulted on highly classified operations, but never acknowledged in official records. "Lieutenant Giles," MacArthur said suddenly, fixing Connor with his penetrating gaze, "you have experience with Japanese defensive preparations. Your assessment?" Connor stepped forward, acutely aware of the historical implications of this moment. In their timeline, Operation Downfall had never occurred. The atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki had ended the war before an invasion became necessary. But here now, the Manhattan Project was still months from completion, and invasion planning proceeded at full speed. "Sir, based on our reconnaissance, the Japanese have constructed an interlocking defensive network, unlike anything we've encountered previously," Connor began. "Each beach is pre-sited for artillery. Underground bunkers and tunnel systems connect defensive positions, allowing forces to move unseen." He indicated specific areas on the map. "These ridge lines conceal artillery that can fire directly onto landing zones. Normal naval bombardment would be ineffective against these hardened positions." "And your recommendation?" Admiral Nimitz inquired. Connor hesitated, feeling the weight of history pressing down on him. "A targeted bombing campaign focusing on command and control centers, followed by precision strikes on key defensive positions immediately before landing operations commence." "Precision strikes?" General Marshall questioned. "With what aircraft?" "With ours, sir," Connor replied simply. MacArthur studied him thoughtfully. After 4 years, the general had become one of the few senior leaders fully briefed on Dragonflight's unusual origins. 4 aircraft, Lieutenant, against an entire nation's defenses. 4 aircraft with capabilities that can create strategic openings, Connor confirmed. "We can't win the invasion for you, but we can reduce initial casualties significantly." The planning session continued for hours, Dragonflight's unprecedented knowledge of modern warfare subtly reshaping invasion tactics. As they filed out, General Caldwell, now their primary liaison, pulled them aside. "Manhattan Project is progressing faster than anticipated," he informed them quietly. "There's a strong possibility Downfall won't be necessary." "And if it is?" Arya asked. "Then Dragonflight will lead the way," Caldwell replied. "But between us, I'm hoping it doesn't come to that." 3 months later, his hope was realized. The war ended without an invasion of Japan, though not precisely as it had in their original timeline. The technological insights gleaned from studying the warthogs had accelerated certain research programs, creating cascading effects throughout the military-industrial complex. As peace settled over a world exhausted by 6 years of global conflict, Dragonflight faced an unexpected question. What now? The answer came in a meeting with President Truman himself, held in a secure room beneath the White House. "Your service has been extraordinary," Truman told them, his manner direct and unvarnished. "General Caldwell informs me that your actions have saved thousands of American lives while preserving the general course of the conflict." The president lit a cigarette, studying each of them in turn. "Now we face the question of your future, your anachronisms, people out of time who possess knowledge that could dramatically alter the development of technology, politics, even society itself." "We understand the risks, Mr. President," Connor assured him. "Do you?" Truman challenged. "Every word you speak, every action you take from this point forward carries the potential to change history. The war provided structure, purpose, clear objectives. Peace is more complicated." He tapped a folder on his desk. "This contains 4 complete identities: backgrounds, documentation, financial resources, everything you need to build lives in this time." The implication was clear. They weren't going home. Whether by choice or necessity, they were being offered a chance to integrate into the past, permanently. "What about our aircraft?" Griff asked. "Secured in a facility beneath the New Mexico desert," Truman replied, "along with all documentation, spare parts, and munitions. As far as the world is concerned, they never existed." After a moment of silence, the president continued, "I'm offering you a choice. Accept these new identities, separate, live quiet lives away from any position of influence, or remain together as advisors on certain sensitive matters, with appropriate cover identities." 4 pairs of eyes met, a silent communication passing between them. 4 years of war, of shared danger and purpose, had forged bonds stronger than time itself. "We stay together," Connor stated, not a request, but a fact. Truman nodded, unsurprised. "Very well. General Caldwell will brief you on the particulars. Needless to say, the nature of your origins must remain absolutely confidential." As they left the White House, Diego voiced what they all felt. "So that's it. We're staying." "Did we ever have a choice?" Arya wondered. "There's always a choice," Griff countered. "We just made ours." Connor said nothing, his thoughts on the future they had lost and the one they were about to build, a future tied inextricably to the past. The years after the war unfolded in ways none of them could have predicted, their lives intertwining with a history they had once studied, but now helped shape, quietly, carefully, from the shadows. Connor Giles, granted the cover identity of a decorated test pilot, established the Frontier Aviation Academy in Arizona. Officially, it trained civilian pilots for the booming commercial aviation industry. Unofficially, it served as a think tank where advanced flight concepts from the future were gradually, subtly introduced into contemporary aircraft design. He married in 1950, Elizabeth Winters, a mathematician who worked on early computer systems for the government. Their relationship began as part of his cover, but blossomed into something genuine. They had 2 children, neither of whom ever learned the truth of their father's origins. On quiet nights, when desert winds swept across the academy grounds, Connor would sometimes gaze at the stars and wonder if, in some distant future, his other self existed, the one who had never fallen into a time vortex, never fought in a war decades before his birth. Aria Monroe took a different path. Using her knowledge of future technological developments, she positioned herself within the nascent computer industry, working alongside early programmers at MIT. Her gender presented obstacles in the male-dominated field of the 1950s, but her extraordinary insights, carefully measured to avoid too rapid advancement of the timeline, earned her grudging respect. In 1956, she established the Monroe Foundation for Women in Aviation, creating opportunities for female pilots decades before they would otherwise emerge. The foundation's headquarters displayed a peculiar logo, the silhouette of an A-10 Warthog, unrecognizable to anyone from that era, but a silent homage to her true past. Unlike Connor, Aria never married. Her relationships remained brief, constrained by the secret she carried. "It's hard to build a life with someone when half of who you are must remain hidden," she once confided to Griff during one of their infrequent reunions. Josh Griffin, Griff to his former squadron, Professor J.T. Griffin to his students, retreated into academia. He settled in Vermont, teaching philosophy and theoretical physics at a small but prestigious college. His lectures on temporal ethics and the nature of causality earned him a reputation as an eccentric but brilliant thinker. "He's either a genius or a madman," one colleague observed. Possibly both. In private, Griff compiled extensive notes on their experience, encoded in a philosophical framework that would appear abstract to anyone without knowledge of their true story. These writings, published under the title Temporal Echoes, Ethical Considerations in Hypothetical Discontinuities, became a cult classic in philosophical circles. Diego Rivas embraced his new identity with characteristic adaptability. As David Rivera, he established connections throughout Latin America, ostensibly as a civilian aviation consultant, but actually guiding the development of air forces in democratic nations facing communist insurgencies. Of the four, Diego struggled most with their permanent displacement. "We died," he told Connor during a rare meeting in 1962. "The people we were, the lives we had, they ended the moment we flew into that vortex. Everyone who knew us has mourned and moved on." "Or will mourn," Connor corrected, "in about 80 years. Diego laughed bitterly. Time travel tenses the language. Despite their disparate paths, they maintained contact through secure channels established by General Caldwell before his death in 1957. Once a year, they would meet at Connor's academy for what appeared to outsiders as a reunion of old war buddies, which in a sense it was. During the Cuban Missile Crisis, all four were quietly summoned to Washington to advise on scenarios based on their knowledge of future Cold War dynamics. Their counsel, filtered through intermediaries to obscure its source, helped shape a resolution that avoided nuclear confrontation. As the world entered the space race, Aria's subtle guidance influenced computer systems development at NASA, while Griff provided theoretical frameworks that accelerated understanding of orbital mechanics. They walked a careful line, advancing knowledge enough to maintain historical momentum without triggering dramatic deviations from the timeline they remembered. In 1972, as they gathered for their annual meeting, Connor raised a question that had lingered unspoken for decades. "Do you ever wonder if we'll cross paths with ourselves? The vortex appeared in 2025. If we live that long..." "I'll be 105, Diego calculated. "Somehow, I doubt I'll make it." "Even if we did," Aria pointed out, Creating a paradox by meeting our younger selves could be catastrophic. Or it could complete the loop, Griff suggested. The universe's way of maintaining temporal consistency. They had no answers, only theories. As they aged in their adopted time, watching history unfold with the unique perspective of those who had already learned its lessons, they found purpose in their continued influence, subtle, anonymous, but profound. By 1975, 30 years after the war's end, they had become fully integrated into the fabric of history. Their knowledge of the future remained valuable, but increasingly less so as the timeline diverged in small ways from the one they had known. The butterfly effect of their presence had created ripples that, while not drastically altering major events, changed countless details of the world's development. "I can't tell anymore," Arya confessed during their 30th reunion. "What's different because of us, and what was always going to happen this way?" "Does it matter?" Diego asked, his once dark hair now silver at the temples. "This is our world now, the only one we have." Connor, studying the faces of friends who had become his only connection to a future now increasingly theoretical, realized that Diego was right. Whatever their origins, whatever timeline they had once belonged to, this was their reality now. Not a temporary displacement, but the foundation of lives built year by year, choice by choice. "To the dragon angels," he proposed, raising a glass. "Past, present, and future." "To us," the others echoed, completing a circle that spanned decades and would eventually span centuries. As the Cold War entered its final decade, the remaining members of Dragonflight found themselves in an increasingly strange position, watching history unfold in ways that simultaneously matched and diverged from their memories. "The Soviet Union is collapsing," Griff observed during their 1985 reunion, now held at his Vermont home as Connor's health no longer permitted easy travel. "Just as we remember, but the specific triggers are different." "Butterfly effect," Arya suggested. "Our presence changed small things that accumulated over time." "Not so small," Diego countered. "The computer revolution accelerated by at least a decade because of Arya's suggestions. The Air Force developed fly-by-wire technology 15 years earlier than in our timeline because of Connor's academy." Connor, now 85 and frailer than his companions due to injuries sustained during the war, smiled faintly. "We tried to be careful." "We were," Arya assured him. "But 4 decades of even minor influence adds up." In 1987, they faced their first loss. Connor Giles, lieutenant, pilot, founder, husband, father, grandfather, passed away peacefully in his sleep. His funeral was attended by hundreds, including senior military officials and aviation pioneers, who had no idea that the technological innovations they credited to him had actually originated decades in the future. At the graveside, Arya, Diego, and Griff stood apart from the other mourners, sharing a grief no one else could understand. They had lost not just a friend, but a piece of their original reality, a living connection to a time that increasingly seemed like a dream. "What happens to our story when we're all gone?" Diego wondered aloud. The answer came from an unexpected source. Among Connor's personal effects was a sealed metal case, constructed to withstand extreme conditions and time itself. Inside, they found comprehensive documentation of their journey, flight logs, mission reports, personal journals, along with a letter addressed to the 3 of them. "My friends, if you're reading this, I've taken my final flight. I've spent decades considering what should happen to our story when we're gone. History won't remember the dragon angels. That was the condition of our agreement with Truman. But I can't accept that everything we experienced, everything we changed, will simply vanish, as if it never happened. The enclosed documentation, which I've been compiling since 1945, with copies of your writings, Griff, don't look so surprised, tells our complete story. I've arranged for this case to be sealed in a time-locked vault beneath the Academy, programmed to open on January 12th, 2025, exactly 100 years after our flight into the vortex. By then, we'll all be gone, and the paradox risk minimal. If the world of 2025 is anything like the one we left, this story will be dismissed as fiction by most. But it will exist. Our truth will exist. It has been the honor of my life to serve with you, across time itself. Until the last flight, Connor. They honored his wishes, adding their own materials to the case before sealing it in the specified vault. Diego designed an elaborate time lock mechanism using technology that wouldn't exist for decades, ensuring the case remained secure until precisely the right moment. The years continued their relentless march. Diego passed away in 1994, his heart finally giving out after a lifetime of pushing boundaries. Griff followed in 2001, leaving Aria as the sole surviving member of Dragonflight. In her final years, Aria found herself in a unique position, watching the approach of a future she had once known. Technology evolved along paths both familiar and strange. Political developments echoed her memories while diverging in crucial details. The world of the early 21st century resembled the one she had left behind, yet contained subtle differences that only someone with her perspective could recognize. On January 10th, 2010, 98 years old, and the last living person from a future that would never exist exactly as she had known it, Aria Monroe drew her final breath. Her last words, spoken to a nurse who couldn't possibly understand their significance. The loop closes soon. 15 years later, on January 12th, 2025, a vault beneath what had once been the Frontier Aviation Academy opened with a soft hiss. Inside, preserved for 80 years, lay the complete story of 4 pilots who had fallen through time itself and changed history in ways both profound and imperceptible. That same day, 4 A-10C Thunderbolt IIs took off from Moody Air Force Base for a routine training mission over the Atlantic. The metal case found its way to historians specializing in World War II aviation. Its contents, detailed accounts of impossible aircraft flown by pilots with verifiable identities but implausible stories, created a minor sensation in academic circles. Obviously an elaborate hoax, concluded the Smithsonian's chief aviation historian, albeit one executed with extraordinary attention to detail and maintained for decades. Others weren't so certain. The technical specifications of the A-10 matched exactly those of the actual aircraft. Mission reports contained details about World War II battles that aligned perfectly with classified documents only recently declassified. And most puzzling of all, 4 pilots with the exact names and service numbers mentioned in the documents had indeed vanished during a training flight over the Atlantic in January 2025. Their aircraft never recovered, their fate unknown. In the desert of New Mexico, a classified archaeological excavation uncovered a sealed underground hangar. Inside, preserved in a state of perfect suspension, sat 4 A-10C Thunderbolt IIs, their fuselages unmarked except for the hand-painted silhouette of a dragon on each nose. Beside them, Sealed in a titanium container lay a handwritten manuscript titled The Warthog Codex, a comprehensive guide to aerial warfare spanning tactics from World War II to conflicts that had not yet occurred. The facility was immediately classified at the highest level. The aircraft and documentation were transported to a secure location for analysis. The few personnel involved were sworn to absolute secrecy. Meanwhile, in the National Archives, a researcher stumbled upon a series of photographs from 1944, reconnaissance images of a German panzer division destroyed in North Africa. In the corner of one photo, barely visible against the desert background, was the distinctive silhouette of an aircraft that would not be designed for another 30 years. The official report attributed the image to damage on the original negative. In a nursing home in Florida, a 101-year-old veteran of Omaha Beach told his great-grandchildren the same story he had been telling for 80 years, of metal angels that appeared from nowhere before dawn on D-Day, breathing fire upon German gun emplacements, saving countless lives. "Nobody believes me," he chuckled, "but I know what I saw. They called them the Dragon Angels." His great-grandchildren humored him, as they always did when he told his impossible tales of the war. In a small cemetery in Arizona, a groundskeeper noticed something unusual. Once a year, on the same date, flowers appeared on 4 graves, though the individuals buried there had died decades apart. Connor Giles, 1900 to 1987. Aria Monroe, 1912 to 2010. Joshua Griffin, 1901 to 2001. And David Rivera, formerly Diego Rivas, 1900 to 1994. The flowers were always the same, white lilies arranged in the shape of wings, and no one ever saw who left them. And in the sky above Moody Air Force Base, where 4 young pilots had taken off on a January morning in 2025 and vanished into mystery, radar operators occasionally reported anomalous readings, brief, impossible signatures that appeared and disappeared too quickly to track. The official explanation: equipment malfunction. The unexplained truth: echoes of wings that had once traversed not just air, but time itself. Their contrails etched across decades. Their story preserved not in official histories, but in the memories of those whose lives they had touched and changed. The Warthogs of Time had completed their final mission, becoming legends whispered among veterans, mysteries debated by historians, impossibilities that nonetheless left tangible traces across the tapestry of the past. Somewhere in the vast expanse of possibility, 4 aircraft flew in perfect formation, their pilots bound by a promise that had transcended time. Wherever we go together. No one gets left behind. The end.